Good evening. It's July 25th, 2022. I'm Scott J. Hamilton, and welcome to the Hamilton Report. Tonight, we're taking a break from introducing you to any of our candidates, or reintroducing to you many of our candidates, I should say, because you're meeting them everywhere. Because tonight, it's time for us to take a hard look at the other party to see what they are doing to truly take apart our democracy one step at a time, and with that, the rights that we have enjoyed for years. All this and more coming up on tonight's Hamilton Report. Friends, I'm delighted that you are with us this evening. It's always a pleasure and a privilege that we don't take for granted when you invite us into your homes. So again, thank you for joining us, and I hope that you will be compelled to join in this conversation this evening, because I'm going to be sharing with you my thoughts that are rather serious, and things that I am very concerned about for us, not as Democrats or as Oklahomans, but for all Americans. And I hope that you will feel free to join in to the discussion. We would love to have your comments as we go. And also, I would encourage you to let folks know that this broadcast is happening, because the more people we have involved, the better off we'll be. As I said a moment ago, we have no candidate tonight. It's just me talking about some things that should be alarming to all of us. Things in Oklahoma, things in our nation, and things in Washington. I never expected in my lifetime to see so many hits against the American people, one after another after another. And yet here we are, finding ourselves in the middle of summer 2022, and things are not looking hopeful for the future of this country. I never, ever imagined saying those very words or believing that in any sense. But we have to be realistic about what we're seeing from the other party. It's not hopeful. It's horrendous is what it is. They are making up lies. They are creating out of whole cloth things that are not true. They're perpetuating each other's lives. And we know from history that if we say a lie often enough, eventually it becomes the truth in the minds of many people. That's going back a ways, and sadly, so many Republicans won't even look at recent history. And yes, I'm talking about January 6th. If, like me, you have sat enthralled watching these hearings, or I guess appalled would be a better word, then you have seen what amounts to an enormous target on our democracy in America and on the American people. The things that we have witnessed, the things that witnesses have sworn to under oath are almost unimaginable in any country like the United States. And yet here we are with living, breathing proof of high crimes and misdemeanors at the highest level of government. Now, one could assume, and unfortunately wrongly so, that there are certain areas of government that should not be influenced by politics. If we look at the Department of Justice, that alone should stand by itself. And yet, under the last administration, it was co-opted to be the enforcer of one person. He infiltrated that department in such a way that it relegated it to nothingness, no help to the American people. And as you are aware by now, those missing texts from so many Secret Service agents, well, it's more than coincidental, it's criminal, because those texts existed well into January, as late as January 25th by some accounts. And that's after several memos had gone out to all Secret Service agents that they must protect their texts. They must keep them, and they were even given instructions on how to do so. So how is it that we have missing texts from the person who was in charge of the president's detail and the vice president's detail. We don't know what are on those texts, and sadly, probably never will. But it's something that someone's going to have to answer to under oath. And that could be the reason why so many of the Secret Service agents have now hired private attorneys to represent themselves, not only at the January 6th Commission hearings, but what certainly will amount to much greater investigation by a responsible Department of Justice. Now, I want us to consider some of the things that have happened recently. Just this weekend, if you can believe it, Marjorie Taylor Greene says that her party should change its name from the Republican Party to the Christian Nationalist Party, as if that's a good idea and something she is proud of. Let me assure you that the Christian Nationalist Party is neither Christian nor a nationalist effort. They have worked, and with good results, I might say, to remake Jesus into a mean-spirited person who is willing to smite enemies to restore America to a Christian nation by force, if necessary. This nation is not and never was a Christian nation. And yet, on the very gallows that were erected at the United States Capitol on January 6th, all to hang Mike Pence, the vice president of our country, were written these words: "In God we trust." What are they afraid of? Our Constitution says nothing about God, does not mention the Bible, does not mention the Ten Commandments, and saying that the U.S. was founded as a Christian nation is by itself a lie, because the fact is much of the nation's earliest wealth was derived from slave labor and the land that was stolen from Native Americans. Now, that is in no way cast in a Christian shadow. It can't be in anyone's book. And yet these so-called Christian nationalists are saying that they want to return to a time when America was great, or MAGA, if you will. Well, America was never great in its beginning. From its very beginning, it was a land full of opportunity for opportunists. We talk about our founding fathers as if they were the wisest men in all the earth. Some of them were not even out of their teens yet. These are who we refer to as the founding fathers. Friends, we have much to learn from history if only we're willing to take a look. As I said, the Constitution says nothing about God, about the Bible, about the Ten Commandments. And is it any wonder that for the first time ever in this country, membership in a religious organization has now dropped to below 50%? Think about what's happening with this Supreme Court. I don't know why it's always been a thing for Republicans to scream and yell about activist judges. Well, let me tell you something. What we have on the Supreme Court right now are a bunch of activists. Some of them lied under oath when questioned about Roe versus Wade. That shouldn't be a big surprise, given the fact that they would rather talk about love of beer and shed a tear or two than tell the truth, even under oath. But they have said that a teacher or a coach may lead a prayer in public schools. Okay, what does that mean? Yes, when I was growing up, we had morning prayer every day in grade school and junior high. By the time I got to high school, it was considered a moment of silence. Well, the moment of silence is fine because you can pray, you can think, you can meditate, you can wonder what you're going to have for lunch. But to offer a prayer, a Christian prayer, I wonder, as a Muslim or as a Jew or as a Hindu or Buddhist, how I would feel if my child were in a situation where prayer was being led, a Christian prayer. Now, my faith is extremely important to me. It guides how I work, what I do, and the way I think. But I can tell you, if I had kids in school, I would not be pleased if I were a Christian if all of a sudden a Satanist were allowed to offer a prayer in public school, which now they can do. I assure you, this will come to the courts again, and they'll be faced looking at what they've already decided, because this is something that is a slippery slope, as much as we're seeing from this court. It's one thing after another with them. And if we look at Roe versus Wade, and I'm staying with religion here for a moment, because not all Christians believe that life begins at conception. Jews don't believe that way, nor do Muslims. In fact, many people believe in life from Genesis, where in the book of Genesis, it says God breathed breath and there was life. Well, I'm not going to get into all of the differences because, frankly, that doesn't matter. But what does matter is we do have differences in the way that we live our lives, the way that our faith or lack of faith or denial of faith, whatever it might be. Those are private choices that we should not be forcing upon one another. That has never worked in any society anywhere. But now look what they're doing. They're going after contraceptions. Now, in the House of Representatives, everyone had an opportunity to vote to make sure to codify into law an individual's right to contraception. It would prevent states from making that illegal. What's fascinating about that is all but 8 Republicans in the United States House of Representatives voted against this measure. Only 8 Republicans voted for it. What does that tell you? It tells you that they want to have control over what you do in the privacy of your own home, your own relationship, your own marriage. How is it the government's option of deciding who does or who does not get contraception? And I'm not talking about just the morning after pill. I'm talking about condoms and birth control pills. And oftentimes, medications that are used for birth control are also used to treat other illnesses. We cannot allow this to continue, my friends, because what we are doing is we are giving away one right at a time until we will all be left scratching our heads and wondering what happened. Think about the Marriage Equality Act that Congress had an opportunity to vote for last week. 49 Republicans stood up and they said, yes, we believe it is good and it is right to allow all adults to marry who they love. We will not stand in the way of 2 same-gender persons marrying one another. It's not our place to decide what love is and what marriage is. And so they stood up against those who were defaming this measure. I should point out that not one Oklahoma congressional representative voted to codify marriage equality into law. Tom Cole is the only one that walked the vote, and he said that he felt rushed. Well, none of the others did. Maybe he just needs to read a little faster or think a little more clearly, because what they have done, the collective lot of them, all 5 from Oklahoma, they have said, we don't care about Oklahomans. We don't care about the American people because, by the way, for the first time ever, 71% of Americans support the right to same-gender marriage. That's almost 3/4 of all Americans, Republicans, Democrats, independents, and people who are not registered to vote at all. 71%. And do our elected representatives listen to the people and vote the way the people want them to? Absolutely not. They continue to pander to a very small slice of people, but those people have money, and that's who they cater to. They are not representing Oklahoma. They are not representing the United States. They're representing their own interests. Speaking of their own interests, there is a governor's race in Pennsylvania. Doug Mastriano, he has a message for right-wing Jewish commentators. Now, notice I said right-wing. We're talking conservative Jewish commentators. And he says, you are not welcome in our movement unless you repent and renounce your Jewish faith. Doug Mastriano, who wants to be governor of Pennsylvania and make a big name for himself, is also a QAnon conspiracy nut and a peddler of stolen election lies like nobody else. Let's move it closer to home. I'll go back and talk about 45 in a few minutes, but I want to talk about the current governor of Oklahoma. He has been mired in nothing but conspiracy, in cronyism, in lining the pockets of his friends, one piece of corruption after another. I don't know how any right-thinking Oklahoman could support him for one more year of governor, much less 4 more years. He and his friends, his buddies, those people that he appoints, the bro cabinet, if you will, are people that have continued to embarrass this state, continue to steal money from Oklahomans. You all know about the Swadley deal and what a mess that was. That's millions and millions of our tax dollars that we will never get back because there were no safeguards put in place by the lieutenant governor whose job it was to oversee tourism in this state. A no-bid contract for our friends? You bet. We'll do that all day long. Want us to give you extra money to cover your management costs? Sure. Oh, why don't we give you even more money that you can tack on top of what you're charging the state for additional management costs? Hey, sounds good to me. Who wouldn't want a deal like that? I can tell you who wouldn't. An honest business person and an honest governor and an honest administration. That's who would not want a deal like that. And the governor and his so-called education secretary, and I'm using that term on purpose because I want you to see something. They're working now to downgrade in Tulsa Public Schools their accreditation. Tulsa Public Schools have the highest graduation rate in the entire state. They're the second largest school district in Oklahoma, and they're battling them over some nonsense. Ask any teacher anywhere in the state about CRT. Is it being taught in kindergarten or first or sixth or ninth or 12th grade? The answer is no. He knew this before he threw up his arms and demanded an audit where he said, and I strongly suspect that they are preaching and teaching CRT in Tulsa Public Schools. Are you kidding me? That is not reason enough to call on an audit and to harm teachers and administrators. And yes, most of all, the students. Well, if that's not bad enough, I want you to take a look at this letter from Walters. There needs to be accountability measures in place to ensure TBS is acting according to the contract. Again, the contract reference is not with TPS. What is he saying? He's calling for accountability when he is not being accountable. He has not been held to account by the governor, at least, for any of his mismanagement. And believe me, there's plenty. Look again at this letter. Notice where it's highlighted in yellow. And right before that, I will need copies, copy apostrophe S, which is what? That's a possessive of all documentation by Tulsa Public Schools on this contract as it moves forward. The man cannot even write a simple letter. And he wants to be our superintendent of public education? No way. We cannot allow that. We cannot afford that. If we do not take seriously the inappropriateness, the mismanagement of all that's happening in this administration, then boy, we are going to get what we deserve. Oh, did I mention that Walters, in addition to his salary from the state of Oklahoma, is also the executive director of a nonprofit organization where he's making over $120,000 a year to do what? You guessed it, push for the privatization of public education. school vouchers. You know, those things that they tout as being the savior of public education. Most of our state is rural. And if you should get one of these scholarships that allows you to go to your school of your choice, you may be looking at 100-mile trip each way to a private school from your home. Oh, and you'd have to provide your own transportation because it would not be available to you otherwise. It's a scam. In the state budget this year, they raised public education funding by 0.5%. That's criminal. When our children, if we really believe the children are our future, then we are doing a grave disservice and we are painting a bleak picture for them and for this state. How did we get to this point? Dorothy, I agree with you. Scratching my head. How did we get here? And how do we correct it? Well, we got here because I will tell you, in my opinion, I believe we got here because people didn't vote. Or they voted as a protest vote. Remember back when Hillary Clinton was running for president and people said, oh, I hate Hillary Clinton. I'd never vote for Trump, so I'm just not going to vote. When you do that, you are literally handing over your vote to someone else. You're no longer protesting. What you're doing is you are surrendering your vote, absolutely giving it away. And so you have nothing to do but blame yourself. That's how we got here. That's how we got here with a Supreme Court packed with conservative, absolute, diehard, hardcore, right-wing Republicans. You remember when Mitch McConnell said he was going to make it his business to make sure that President Obama didn't get anything done, got none of his appointments to the Supreme Court, and would make sure he was a one-term president? President Obama was a two-term president and has much, much to be proud of in his time serving our nation. Not true with the last one. Not true at all. Because what we're seeing today, we are literally paying for. I want you to consider this. We have Republicans in the state of Oklahoma running for public office for the State House of Representatives. One, I won't even share his name because I'm so disgusted with him, was seen at a Trump rally wearing a t-shirt that says, "It's okay to be white." Now, I don't know who told him that it wasn't okay, but you know what I think? I think he's afraid, like so many others of these maladjusted malcontents. These are people who are, they're deathly afraid that they're losing their white grip on this country. The majority of Americans under 18 years old are from minority communities. Well, this nut job I was just mentioning here in Northeast Oklahoma, he is obviously very concerned about white replacement theory, the theory. And all it is a conspiracy saying that white people are being replaced by people of color. Idiots all. But guess what? They have money. They have the money that they need, and they're getting all the money that they need to run commercials and day after day after day in our office. What do we get? But Democrats who are angry because they're not seeing commercials for Democratic candidates. Friends, we've got some great Democratic candidates in Oklahoma this year, but it costs money for TV commercials. It costs money for mailers. It costs money to travel from county to county, from one end of the state to the other. But that's what our candidates are doing. They're knocking doors because they care about people. Next week, my guest on this broadcast will be a woman, Wariga Bowman, who is running for Corporation Commission. Brilliant. You'll hear from her next week. But the reason that I bring her up is because I want you to consider this. How much has your electric bill gone up this summer? How much is your OG&E bill if you're in Oklahoma City or this part of the state? Chances are it's a lot more than what it was last month and certainly last year. And I got to notice that they are requesting another increase to pay for infrastructure. OG&E pays its employees well, and I am all for every employer paying good wages to their staff. But do you know that the CEO makes over $8 million a year for OG&E? Top level executives are all way up there, almost at that. And get this, the average board member for OG&E makes $250,000 with no responsibilities but showing up to meetings to vote. That's a gig I'd love to have. But who's paying for this? You are, and I am, and sadly, people who can least afford it are the ones who are being increased to the point where they have to decide if they're going to pay the rent or mortgage or protect themselves and their family by running the air conditioner. Friends, things are upside down. And now we have a former president who is gearing up to announce that he's running again. I said the first time, oh, it can't happen. So I'll never say that again. But imagine, what if we have 4 more years of Stitt? Imagine where this state will be. More corporations will be running out of here as quick as Panasonic did. They will leave this state. They will not consider moving here with draconian laws that harm women, that harm minorities, that harm the poorest of the poor. I'm tired of hearing about a top 10 state. We are top 10 in every worst category in this entire country because of Stitt and his failures. And his best friend, the person that endorsed him, the last president, is planning to run again. And he's going to, quote, clean house this time. He didn't win the second time, and yet he still peddles that lie. As late as this weekend, had an event in Arizona where he arrived 3 hours late, dripping wet, at times speaking incoherently. They want to talk about President Biden's fitness for office. I'm done. I'm done being nice. It's time for all of us to take off the gloves. I can only say so much. Alicia Andrews could only say so much as chair of our party. It's up to all of us, friends, to get out there, to talk to our neighbors, to talk to our reasonable family members. Don't waste your time on forever Trumpers. They will never change. They will never be the truth, and they will be just as satisfied staying there under their white hoods and robes. So we'll make no progress there. But there are a lot of people in this country that have some smarts, and those are the ones we have to talk to. Those are the ones we have to target. Because if we are not willing to tell the truth, and if we are not willing to do it in a bold way and to speak up, and I don't mean just sitting and posting on social media. That's a good start, but that doesn't get us where we need to be. That will not in and of itself elect more Democrats to run for office, to be elected to office. It won't. It takes commitment. It takes time. It takes all of us talking now. We are too close to November now for us not to speak up and to change the minds. And all we've got to do is present facts to parents with children, facts to seniors who are unsure if they're going to be able to keep their health care. Remind them that we have powerful Republicans in Congress now who are dead set against taking away Social Security and Medicare, things that you have paid into and I have paid into since we began working. It's not their money to take away, but that's their plan. Friends, I hope I've given you something to think about tonight. I hope that you will take these words to heart. I can't do this. You can't do this, but together we can. And it's time to work with your county party. It's time to work with the state party. It's time to work with candidates. We have to realize the very thin thread that is holding our democracy together. Because if we don't, we risk losing it all. Thank you so much for being with us tonight. I appreciate you more than you know. And I don't take for granted the privilege it is for you to invite us into your home every Monday evening at 6:30. I'll be back here again next Monday at 6:30. Until then, take good care of yourselves, stay hydrated, and believe that together we can make a powerful, positive change for Oklahoma, the nation, and the world. For all of us at the Oklahoma Democratic Party, I'm Scott J. Hamilton, thanking you for joining us. Good night.